Hi guys, welcome to Science with Sarah. Today we're going to be talking about the Utah Lake Watershed, more specifically the Utah Lake, which is right behind me, and more specifically some problems that Utah Lake has and some solutions. Before we jump in, we need to know a little history about Utah Lake. 75,000 to 8,000 years ago, a Pleistocene lake almost as big as Lake Michigan existed, and this was called Lake Bonneville. Then, in the midst of this, about 12,000 years ago, the climate got warmer and drier, shrinking the lake, finally becoming, as you can see, Utah Lake. And now done with that boring history lesson, let's talk about geography. But first, you can see this is a major lake. And where do you think all this water comes from? Well, come with me and we will find out. This right here is one of the more major inflows of Utah Lake. This is about the tail end of the Provo River, and the Provo River accounts for 36% of the water that Utah Lake gets. One of the other major ones is the Spanish Fork River, which gives about 24%. And then there's some other ones like the AF River, Current Creek, Dry Creek, Hobble Creek, and other smaller creeks that give a little bit more water to it. This right here is one of the major outflows for Utah Lake. This river right here will lead into the Jordan River, and other than this, one of the greater outflows for Utah Lake is evaporation, and that accounts for about 42%. And now we're back. So now that we know where the water comes from and where it goes, let's talk a little bit more about the lake. Utah Lake is known as a slightly saline, like I discussed earlier, and it's also a eutrophic lake, which means that it's really enriched with minerals. One of them being phosphorus, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Now we got that boring stuff out of the way, let's talk about the pressing issue here. Algae! Utah Lake has a long history of algae problems since the excess amount of pollution. Since 1948, there have been raw sewage dumping into the lake, releasing mass amounts of phosphorus. This phosphorus has settled down into the benthic zone, creating a thick layer of nutrient-rich soil. Carp will go down to the bottom of the lake and stir this soil up, putting the phosphorus and any other nutrients back into the water. With the help of the phosphorus and the carp, Utah Lake has a major algae issue. Some talked about solutions for this algae problem has been dredging of the lake. Now dredging is taking the bottom of the lake, just scooping it up and taking it out. And obviously with the size of this lake, you can understand that that would be a lot of money. The solution that I am proposing is putting carp into the fishing guidebook. The state of Utah produces guidebooks such as upland game, big game, and fishing. And in fishing, it specifically says which fish you can and cannot release and how many fish you can catch for each lake. Now, currently under Utah Lake, there is not a spot for carp. By putting carp on this list and saying that you can catch it and not release it would decrease the number of carp, meaning that there would be less uptake of phosphorus. Less phosphorus in the system means less phosphorus for the algae to use, meaning less algae. And so by doing this, this is a great step, especially with the size of this lake, forward to curing the algae problem. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Science with Sarah, and I hope you enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about your beautiful Utah Lake. Thanks, bye.